The diary of Yasuharu Wakazaka, a Japanese naval commander in 1592, says, "Don't run into Joseon's naval forces. Don't run into them, especially if you see that man's flag. Don't fight and run away." It's a record of Admiral Yi Sun-sin, as you know, but the Japanese military records say a different number. The Japanese naval records show that they fought the Joseon naval forces 57 times and never won. Isn't that strange? Why is it 23 times in the Joseon records and 57 times in the enemy's Japanese records? Worse yet, Admiral Yi Sun-sin's own Nanjung Ilgi recorded far more battles than official records. Someone intentionally reduced the numbers. The problem wasn't the enemy. The real enemy was within the enemy. Admiral Yi Sun-sin won so much that it was the problem. Yi Sun-sin is a hero who is so strong that he has become the object of fear. The court had to undermine his major. With only 23 wins out of 23, it was not the truth, it was the result of political compromise. Today we reveal the truth that has been hidden for 400 years. The story that the textbook didn't tell, the record of history hidden, and the real Yi Sun-sin that we didn't know was just the half of Yi Sun-sin, you know. 23 wins out of 23. The number first appeared 200 years after Yi Sun-sin died. Why? In the late King Yeongjo era of the Joseon dynasty, the royal court needed to deify Yi Sun-sin. It needed a perfect hero story to establish a collapsed royal authority. But there was a problem. His actual record was too overwhelming. He decided that people wouldn't believe it if he used these numbers as they were. For example, 57 battles, 63 encounters, 63 encounters, and 80 battles, large and small, in the Nanjung Ilgi. If it's too perfect, it's like a lie. So I chose 23 wins out of 23. The criteria for the 23rd round was simple. Admiral Yi fought almost every day in a large-scale naval battle head-on with the Japanese fleet. If you look at the Nanjung Ilgi, you will see that today, 5 foreign ships will join the Korean War. There are countless records of enemy supply lines, night raids, and attacks on positions, but they're all excluded from the official records. 23, that number was a minimal recognition. It was a line that should be acknowledged for the court, and for Yi Sun-sin, this was unfair. And most importantly, behind the number of 23 wins, 23 wins, 23 wins, which is perfect, but not threatening, but not beyond the king. 23 wins which were made by politics. So how many times did Yi actually fight? An analysis of Nanjung Ilgi shows a shocking number. 23 large-scale naval battles, 34 medium-sized battles, 48 small battles, 27 night raids and surprise attacks, 15 days in total to block supply lines, 15 days in 7 years, and 15 days in which Yi fought. He never lost, and his Japanese record is similar. Toyotomi Hideyoshi's command book has a phrase like this: 57 battles with the Joseon Navy, all defeated. Don't go out to sea anymore. Letters from the Ming General Jinlin, General Li of Joseon has never been defeated out of more than 60 times we have seen. All 3 countries have much larger numbers than 23. So why were they missing? The standard of mediation was clear. First, head-to-head battle with the Japanese fleet. Second, excluding battles involving the Ming dynasty. Third, perfect victory. And so on. 151 was reduced to 23. For example, on July 8, 1592, Gyeonnae battle, 40 foreign ships were defeated. But it's not on the official record. It's small, so on March 4, 1594, there's no official record of the devastation of Jangmunpo's night attack. It's a surprise attack. In the end, 23 out of 23 was the least officially acceptable, and 151 out of 151 was actually Yi Sun-sin's victory. But why? Did the court hide the truth? The answer is simple. A general who won 151 times was too dangerous, because the people would trust him more than the king. 23 out of 23 was a compromise. It was the moment politics beat history. Nanjung Ilgi Yi Sun-sin wrote this diary every day for 7 years. But there are many strange things about this diary. First, the history of strange point combat is too concise. 5 enemy lines were defeated, Japanese positions were attacked, supply lines were cut off. It's as if it was intentionally written briefly, just in case anyone saw it. Second, Stranger Things. There's no record of a specific date. For example, a whole week's worth of records from September 24th to October 5th in 1594 have been lost. Why? During this time, Yi refused orders from the court to advance to Busan, but Yi knew that it was a ship and that the Japanese were manned, so he refused orders and erased the records to avoid the eyes of the court. Third, there are cryptic expressions all over the diary. It came back safely today. Heaven helped. God protected. At first glance, it's an ordinary expression, but it means that you've actually succeeded in a dangerous operation. For example, 90 years ere, Shuri, the sky helped back safely. It penetrated deep into the main camp, defeated 10 supply ships, and Yi Sun-sin was hiding his credit. Why did Yi hide his credit? The reason is clear. During the Joseon dynasty, a servant who was too good to survive. He purposely lowered himself because it posed a threat to the royal authority. The Nanjung Ilgi was not an official record, but a personal defense record. It was a survival diary to prove that I followed orders, that I acted cautiously, that I did not betray the king. But ironically, thanks to this diary, we learned the truth. How many times Yi fought and how carefully he had to live. Seonjo is the king of Joseon during the Imjin War. In the history books, he is described as an incompetent king, but it is actually more complicated. He was not incompetent, he was afraid of Yi Sun-sin. When the war broke out in 1592, King Seonjo abandoned Hanyang and ran away to Uiju. But Yi kept winning at sea. The king ran away and his subjects kept winning. Who did the people believe? The king abandoned us, but Admiral Yi Sun-sin stayed and fought. This was the worst-case scenario for the king, a situation in which subjects are loved more than kings. Seonjo makes a decision. Get rid of Yi Sun-sin. You can't do it directly, but indirectly. The first way to undermine one's major, record 151 wins as 23 wins. The second way to constantly doubt. Is Yi Sun-sin really loyal? Maybe he's trying to rebel. Why can't we end the war quickly? There are a lot of ridiculous doubts. The third method to dismiss Yi Sun-sin is dismissed 3 times during the war. In 1593, the reason for the first dismissal was that he did not completely annihilate the enemy. But the funny thing is that it was the time when Yi Sun-sin won the most. After all, the number of 23 wins in the war was the safeguards of the court. Let's acknowledge it, but let's not fly too much. Let's make a hero, but let's not put him above the king. Yi Sun-sin was a victim of power, both alive and dead. And even now, 400 years later, we still remember only the numbers made by the court. 23 wins in the war is the first truth that history has hidden. Yi Sun-sin didn't fight alone, but that's how history was recorded. Admiral Yi Sun-sin, the immortal hero, saved the country alone. This is a lie. There were geniuses behind Yi Sun-sin. The first man, Ryu Seong-ryong, was a justice and political protector of Yi Sun-sin. Without Ryu, Yi Sun-sin would have died in the first dismissal. Every time King Seonjo dismissed Yi Sun-sin, he risked his life to stop him. Your Highness, you cannot win without Yi Sun-sin. If you kill him, Joseon will be ruined. Jung-woon discovered the enemy before Yi Sun-sin, moved faster than Yi Sun-sin, and rushed boldly ahead of Yi Sun-sin. It was Jung-woon who completed the Hakik-jin line in the Battle of Hansando. It was also Jung-woon who entered the enemy line first in the Battle of Myeongnyang, and he died before Yi Sun-sin in the Battle of Noryang. Without Jung-woon, it would not be possible to win 23 out of 23 games. However, history does not remember Jung-woon. There were dozens of these geniuses under Yi Sun-sin. Lee Eoki, Kim Hwan, and Woosu Yi Sun-sin's sons were all erased from history. Why? The answer is simple. A perfect hero story doesn't need a supporting role. But the truth is that Yi was not alone, and that fact is the greater story. Turtle ship, who made it? Most of the answers are Yi Sun-sin. Wrong. The person who designed and built the turtle ship was an unknown engineer named Na De-yong. Yi Sun-sin came up with the idea, and Na De-yong actually made it. But history erased Na De-yong. Na De-yong was a genius. An iron-armored ship, a structure that can shoot cannons in 360 degrees, a roof that the enemy cannot climb on, and a device that blocks the view by emitting smoke. The iron-armored ship from the west was 300 years later. Nadaeong's turtle ship was the world's strongest warship at the time, but he did not make a single line in history. What happened to Nadaeong? There's no record, but after the war, the royal court retrieved all the turtle ship designs for confidentiality reasons, and Nadaeong disappeared from history. Some scholars assume that Nadaeong was silenced. There's no evidence that the royal court removed him to prevent the secret of the turtle ship from leaking out. But it's true that he disappeared completely. Even now, we have not fully restored the turtle ship because there is no blueprint left. Na's genius disappeared with him. Yi Sun-sin was great, but behind that greatness were unknown geniuses like Nadaeong. History doesn't remember them. There is only one hero to remember. Admiral Yi Sun-sin's army was special. It was not a regular army. In the early days of the Imjin War, the Joseon Navy was virtually wiped out. But how could Yi continue to fight? The people came by themselves. It was not a draft, but a command. Why voluntarily? There is a record like this in the Nanjung Ilgi. Today about 30 people came and asked me to fight with them. I shed tears. Other generals forcibly led the people. But Yi Sun-sin was different. Yi Sun-sin ate the same food as the people. Yangban, Sangmin, and Novi ate the same food on the same boat. In the Joseon dynasty, it was a revolution. Yi Sun-sin took care of an injured soldier himself. When a low-ranking sailor was injured, he applied medicine himself. He sent his salary to the family of a dead soldier. The Nanjung Ilgi also has this record. Today, a sailor from a slave, Kim Cheol, sent his mother 3 months' salary. The people knew that this man really cared for us. The king ran away, but Yi Sun-sin remained. The Yangban abandoned the people, but Yi fought with the people. Miracle of winning over 330 ships with 12 ships in the Battle of Myeongnyang. But there was another real miracle. With the general, you can win that most of the people on the 12 ships were volunteers. They believed that and really won. The real power of Yi was neither a strategy nor a turtle ship. The trust of the people, that was the most powerful weapon. Toyotomi Hideyoshi's secret letter. This document, written in 1593, contains something shocking. There are ghosts in the Sea of Joseon. The ghost's name is Yi Sun-sin, our Navy's 57th appearance. Defeat 57 times. No longer fighting the Joseon Navy. Advance only on land. Do you know how humiliating this is? Recognized by the most powerful man of the enemy? Yasuharu Wakizaka, a Japanese general who survived the Battle of Hansando, wrote after returning home, "The Joseon Navy is not human. They come in like waves, they swirl like storms, and they devour everything like typhoons. Especially their general, Yi Sun-sin, seemed to know in advance what we would do." Wakizaka suffered from Yi Sun-sin's nightmare all his life. Even after the war, he said he was terrified whenever he saw the sea. At that time, Japan had just unified the Warring States era, the strongest warriors who fought for 100 years. For them, Joseon should have been an easy opponent. In fact, the Japanese military overwhelmed them on land, but the sea was different. If you look at the records of the Japanese naval forces, you will see that these things are repeated. The encounter of the Joseon Navy, the failed attempt to retreat, the attempt to destroy, the detection of night raids, the annihilation, the annihilation, the annihilation, the destruction of the strongest Japanese naval forces never won. Toyotomi Hideyoshi promised a great reward for those who kill Yi Sun-sin, but no one succeeded. Until the end of the war, it was not the Joseon Navy that Japan was most afraid of. It was one man, Yi Sun-sin. He was a genius who acknowledged even the smallest things, but the Joseon royal government doubted him. In 1597, UN troops from the Ming dynasty arrived. They didn't come to help Joseon. They came to prevent Japanese troops from invading Ming. Ming ignored Joseon's naval forces. Didn't Joseon protect its land? We are responsible for the Sea Admiral Jinlin. At first, he regarded Yi Sun-sin as trivial, but at the first meeting of operations, Jinli Shock said, "He movement of the army Japanese soldiers will come here in 3 days. They will use this route. We will wait here and attack like this." "How are you so sure?" Yi replied. "We fought for 7 years. Now we even know their breathing sounds. 3 days later, the Japanese military appeared exactly on the spot. The last great victory of the Allied forces in the Battle of Myeongnyang. Admiral Yi Sun-sin is much stronger than us. In this battle, Jinlin reports to the Ming court after the battle. Admiral Yi Sun-sin of Joseon is a god of war. His tactics are at a level that we should learn. Without him, we would not have won. When Yi Sun-sin died, the truth is that he cried for 3 days. He said that the sky collapsed. There is a record about Yi Sun-sin in the history book of the Ming dynasty. There was a general named Yi Sun-sin of Joseon. No one beat him in the sea. Neither the enemy Japan nor the ally Ming acknowledged Yi Sun-sin. That is the biggest tragedy. It was one of the most complete victories in the history of the Battle of Han-sando, the defeat of 73 Japanese naval ships on August 14, 1592. Yi became a hero. The people cheered and praised the Ming dynasty. But something else was going on in the palace of Hanyang. King Seonjo was angry, not pleased but angry. The reason was simple. Yi Sun-sin is so outstanding. King Seonjo asked his servants, "What happens if Yi Sun-sin keeps winning?" The servants answer, "People will follow Yi Sun-sin more than your highness." That is dangerous. That very day, King Seonjo makes a decision. Keep Yi Sun-sin in check. A week after the Battle of Han-sando, strange appeals begin to appear in the court. Yi Sun-sin did not completely destroy the enemy. Yi Sun-sin is exaggerating his major. Yi Sun-sin ignored the orders of the court. All were false, but it kept coming up. Who made these appeals? There was no evidence, but everyone knew it was the will of the king. Yi Sun-sin wrote in the Nanjung Ilgi, "I have achieved a great victory, but I am heavy in my heart. I am afraid of the doubts of the royal government. I just want to protect the country." But the day after the biggest victory, Yi Sun-sin felt fear, not joy. A general who becomes more dangerous as he wins. This was the tragedy of Joseon. Won Gyun is recorded as the most incompetent general in history, but this is also the half-digit truth. Won Gyun was actually an able general. In the early days of the Japanese invasion of Korea, he also won many times. The problem is that he started to be compared to Yi Sun-sin. The 7th and 23rd episodes of Won Gyun's victory, Yi Sun-sin's victory, official Won Gyun did better no matter how good he was, and the government explicitly discriminated against him. Even if he won the same victory, he collapsed as Yi Sun-sin's promotion, rewards, and ignoring Won Gyun repeatedly. There is a record like this in the Nanjung Ilgi. Won Gyun cursed me because he was drunk. I understand him. He must be troubled that he didn't get recognized even though he did his best. 1597 King Seonjo called Won Gyun. "Are you better than Yi Sun-sin?" Won Gyun answered, "Yes, your highness was lying." But King Seonjo wanted that lie. After Yi Sun-sin was dismissed and appointed as a control officer, Won Gyun finally got the position he wanted. But that was a single stomach. Won Gyun, a warrior of the Joseon Navy, almost wiped out on July 16, 1597, didn't lose because he was incompetent. He lost because he wasn't Yi Sun-sin. No one could replace Yi Sun-sin. Won Gyun's tragedy was not that he was a bad person, but that being compared to Yi Sun-sin was a tragedy. History has recorded Won Gyun as a villain, but in reality, he was also a victim. In April 1597, when Yi Sun-sin was arrested, I missed Kiyomasa Kato, the enemy general. It was a ridiculous crime. Kato was on land and Yi Sun-sin was guarding the sea. But the government didn't matter. Its goal was to get rid of Yi Sun-sin. Yi was sent to Hanyang and tortured. The Nanjung Ilgi does not have a record of this period. Was it too painful to write? Or was it because he didn't want to show it to future generations? His servants demanded the death of Yi Sun-sin, but Ryu Seongryong blocked him. If he killed Yi Sun-sin, Joseon would be ruined. In the end, King Seonjo came up with a compromise. "I will not kill you. Instead, serve as a white soldier." It was the greatest humiliation of the Joseon dynasty when Yi Sun-sin was sent to the northern front line, where he was ordered to die at the most dangerous front line. But he survived. Wearing the clothes of the commoners, as a low-ranking soldier, he walked the battlefield. The first sentence that resumed the Nanjung Ilgi, "Even if the country abandons me, I cannot abandon my country." And that's when news of the Battle of Chilchunryang was heard, that Yi Sun-sin, the annihilation of the Joseon Navy, got down on his knees and wailed. But it was already too late. No, it's not over yet. In August 1597, King Seonjo reluctantly admits, there is no other way than Yi Sun-sin. Yi Sun-sin is appointed as a control officer again, but the remaining ships are only 12, and the Japanese fleet is 33, which is impossible for anyone to see. Yi Sun-sin raised the field for King Seonjo. God still has 12 ships. But this was not a miracle. It was a calculation. Yi chose the Myeongnyang Strait. Reason: first, narrow waterway disables Japan's number dominance. Second, fast currents change direction, 4 times awareness. Third, only Yi Sun-sin knows the location of the reef. Yi Sun-sin calculated the tide time perfectly. At noon, the tide changes, attacking at that moment. At noon on September 16, 1597, when the tide turned, Yi gave orders to rush. The Japanese military was taken aback. 12 ships rushed to 330 ships. The Japanese fleet was in chaos in the narrow canal. The ships behind them tried to go forward, but they couldn't. They bumped into each other, got caught on a reef, and were swept away by the tide. At that moment, Yi fought back and forth. 12 ships seemed impossible, but in the narrow canal. As a result of the battle, the Japanese fleet was sunk 31 ships, completely sunk 130 ships, 10 Joseon Navy casualties. Is this a miracle? No, it was a perfect calculation, a scientific victory that calculated everything: topography, tides, psychology, and timing. But Yi was not pleased. Nanjung Ilgi. Today he won a big victory, but I am afraid that the royal government will doubt me again. On the day of his greatest victory, Yi was afraid of the royal government, not the enemy. This is the real tragedy of Yi Sun-sin. Many people are mistaken. Yi Sun-sin was wrong that he only attacked Japanese battleships. The real goal of Yi Sun-sin was to supply ships. The Japanese military had 200,000 people on the land of Joseon. What about their food? All of their weapons? Yi Sun-sin knew that if you look at the Nanjung Ilgi, there are constant stories of supply ships. Yi Sun-sin knew that today's Nanjung Ilgi, 7 supply ships were sunk, successful in blocking food carriers and the delivery of weapons carriers. The result was clear that the essence of war was not a spectacular victory, but sustainability. Half of the 200,000 Japanese troops in Joseon died of hunger. They did not die in battle, but died of starvation. This strategy appears in modern military instructors. The same is true of how the U.S. defeated Japan in the Second World War and the Pacific War before shutting down shipping lanes. He cut the supply line. Yi was 400 years ahead of him, the genius who chose a boring victory over a spectacular one. What's more surprising is that Yi was a master of psychological warfare. There is a record in the Nanjung Ilgi that says, "Tonight I lit up 10 ships and went back and forth in front of the enemy camp. I couldn't sleep in fear. The enemy didn't actually attack. I just showed it. The real power of the turtle ship was not its performance. It was fear." Yi spread rumors about the turtle ship on purpose. Iron monster ships, cannonballs pour out like rain, and most of them were exaggerated to say that they would shoot fire. But the effect was certain. Japanese sailors ran away before they could fight whenever they saw the turtle ship. It was a perfect victory for psychological warfare. Yi also shed fake information. He pretended to be a spy on purpose and showed false operational plans. He believed in the information and prepared for it. But Yi attacked a completely different place. So did Han-sun in the battle. Yi Sun-sin purposely retreated and lured the enemy. The Japanese chased after him, thinking he had won, and he was sucked into the Hakik camp. War is not won by power but by head. Yi Sun-sin knew perfectly that. It's a tactic that became the symbol of Hakik-jin, the wing of a crane, and Yi Sun-sin. But most people don't know what it really means. Hakik-ji is not just a siege camp. It's a perfect ship. Step 1. The central fleet retreats as if it's weak. Step 2. The enemy comes into the center, chasing after it. Step 3. Both wings surround it. But there is a real genius. Step 4. It does not completely block the back. Why? It intentionally opens the way to escape. Human instincts fight desperately when under siege, but when they see a way to escape, they rush towards it. Yi Sun-sin has already placed ambush on the road. As a result, enemies who were fleeing in an orderly fashion, annihilating in a narrow street. This was the real completion of Hakik-jin. The U.S. Naval Academy still teaches Hakik-jin, the Sun-Sin's crane wing formation. During World War II, the U.S. Navy applied this tactic. This concept is still alive in the modern war of the 20th century. Yi Sun-sin's tactics 400 years ago are still recognized as the best, but we don't really know their value. We just learn about the shape of the summer wings. Yi Sun-sin's genius is much deeper than we think. The U.S. Naval Academy, Annapolis. The place where he raises the world's best naval officers is included in the textbook. His tactics revolutionized the naval battle. The textbook highlights 3 of Yi Sun-sin's tactics: Bugu Simli Sili, World War 1942, Midway Isun, Shin, Jiyong, Halong Isun, Bogupson, Chadon Isun, Shin, Simli. Results: U.S. Army Admiral Nimitz said after the battle, "Perfect victory. I studied Admiral Yi Sun-sin's tactics. That was the key to victory." As of the 21st century, the Navy of the Republic of Korea, as well as the Navy of the United States, Japan, and the United Kingdom, train Yi Sun-sin's tactics. In particular, battles in narrow straits follow Yi Sun-sin's roaring currents. 400 years later, Yi Sun-sin's tactics are still up to date. The irony is that the whole world is studying Yi Sun-sin, but that the Korean people only memorize the numbers 23 wins. The real greatness of Yi Sun-sin was not a number, but a tactic, and he still lives and breathes today. On October 19, 1598, the last battle of the Myeongnyang Sea Battle, Toyotomi Hideyoshi died. The Japanese military was ordered to withdraw. The war was virtually over. But why did Yi attack? Because the government ordered him to destroy the fleeing enemy. Yi Sun-sin knew that this was a dangerous battle. Running enemies are the most dangerous. They fight desperately, but they couldn't resist the order. On the night before he entered the match, Yi did something strange. He handed down his general's blessing to his nephew and told him like a will, "It seems that tomorrow's battle will be the last." The battle was a victory for Joseon, but just before the victory, Yi was shot by an enemy bullet. In the last word, "Do not announce my death," and he closed his eyes. 54 years old. On the last day of the 7 Years' War, the greatest general died in the most unnecessary battle. Why? No one knows, but the question remains. The response of the court to the news of Yi Sun-sin's death was strange. It was not sad, but relieved. Records of the annals of King Seonjo Yi Sun-sin is killed. Yi Sun-sin must acknowledge his credit, but refrain from excessive praise. One day after his death, he has already begun to undermine his credit. His funeral was humble. The future of the hero who saved our country was unbelievably neither a state funeral nor a king paid his respects. After that, Yi was forgotten 200 years ago. Until the late Joseon dynasty, he was just a general who fought well back in the past. Yi Sun-sin was noticed again. Ironically, it was only after the country was lost to the Japanese that people began to remember him. He became a national hero only after the country was defeated by the Japanese. The Yi Sun-sin we know now is not Yi Sun-sin during his lifetime. Yi Sun-sin, who was politically created 300 years after his death. The perfect hero, a great man who was deified, was not perfect. There was fear, loneliness, and a sense of betrayal, and yet he fought to the end. That is the real Yi Sun-sin. 23 wins. Now you know that this number is not all. You are not alone. You are with the geniuses and the people. You are not the perfect hero. You are terrified and alone. But nevertheless, he fought. Even though the court betrayed him, he protected the people. He kept the sea to the end, even though he was afraid of death. This is the real Admiral Yi Sun-sin that we should remember. Not 23 wins in 23 games, but a human who never gave up in despair. That is the true greatness of Yi Sun-sin. 400 years have passed. Yi Sun-sin is still with us, but we did not know him properly. 23 wins in 23 games. We did not know the truth behind this number. Today you knew the betrayal of the court, the calculated genius of Yi Sun-sin, and the solitude of man Yi Sun-sin, were not perfect. But that is why he is even greater. The miracle achieved by an imperfect human being, not a perfect God, is really touching. The last line of the Nanjung Ilgi, "I will keep this sea even if I die." He kept his promise. The shocking truth behind the death of 23 winds. You now know the real Admiral Yi Sun-sin, and remember, history is not a number, but a person. Yi Sun-sin is not a number, but a story of all of us. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and like are the strength to reveal more truth.